the sophomore sensation for USC, the probably eventual national player of the year in women's college basketball star, Juju Watkins, suffers a torn ACL. Just a devastating injury for USC, for her, obviously for women's college basketball in general, but done for the season, likely going to be done for next year as well when you factor in the rehab that she has up against it with this torn ACL. USC, yes, they win the game. They cruise to victory. They cover the number, all that stuff against Mississippi State, but just an absolute bummer there. You could see it on the court, the reactions from the USC players. Kudos to them for kind of turning it around and just getting out there and playing the game and compartmentalizing. But after the game, even speaking with their head coach when she spoke with the media, Lindsey Gottlieb, like, it's just a very tough situation for the Trojans now that Juju Watkins will no longer be with them this tournament and probably not with them next year as well. PJ, I don't know if you were watching the game live. I'm sure you saw it on social media because everybody was talking about it last night before we all went to bed. Just a bummer for us as sports fans and sports bettors and just people who love good competition to not have the nation's best player out there for the rest of the NCAA tournament on the women's side.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is when injuries just suck, especially this time of year. Like, you want to see all the best teams with all their best players, and certainly Juju, who's the best player in the sport. It just stinks, This is what we all feared was going to happen with Cooper Flagg with Duke a couple weeks ago, right? We all thought he was going to be done for the year, and it's like, man, we're going to go into the tournament without Cooper Flagg, and now here we are in the women's side, and we're losing Juju for the rest of the tournament. Like you said, Femi, probably not going to be back for next year as well. So really sucks for USC. Great to see them, though, respond and kind of take it to Mississippi State last night, right? Because I'm sure as just like humans and teammates, when you see your star, your best player go down like that, it's a shock to the system for everybody. So for them to rally, kind of take care of business, obviously, the deeper that they go into the tournament, the tougher it's going to be for them. But yeah, it's just, it sucks. I think we were all looking forward to that USC and UConn collision course in that Elite Eight game. It certainly looks like that's where we were headed. Now with USC dropping to 25-1 on BetMGM, UConn becomes the favorite at plus 175. So it's unfortunate, obviously, that this happened to Juju. USC had a great year, number 1 seed, had a great chance to not only go to the Final Four, win the national title, and now they're losing their best player. So interested to see how this affects, the lines, Femi, like where this goes over the next couple days, right? Because this is when it becomes tough for odds makers. Like, not only do you lose the team's best player, you lose one of the best players in the country. So how much is she worth to the betting market? And yeah, we're going to find out a lot about USC, man, and the rest of these players. So I'm excited to talk to Christy later on in the show and kind of just, get the vibe around this USC team and if they can make a run without Juju for the rest of the season. But it sucks seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a big-time bummer. And after the game, Lindsey Gottlieb, the coach of the USC Trojans, she said, quote, "I'd be lying if I told you that I wasn't rattled seeing Juju on the floor crying. This is a human game, and so I obviously tried my best to be what I need to be for the team, but internally, it's a lot." And that's why I give them big-time kudos because they end up winning the game like in blowout fashion, 96-59. They're like around a 20-point favorite, but they really rallied behind all their guys like Kiki Iriafen. Like, she was really good in the game, scoring 36 points on 16-22 shooting, and she's also an awesome player as well. Was really good at Stanford, then transferred over to USC. So it's not just like Juju Watkins and like the rest of the guys out there. Like they still have a really talented team, but she's clearly the best player and probably the best player in the country. Big Ten Player of the Year, and the Big Ten's awesome with UCLA and how they are so good, like those battles that they had out there in Los Angeles, and to see that happen on a stage where a lot of people were incredibly excited about the prospects, myself included, of seeing USC and UConn play in the Elite Eight. Like, no disrespect to the other teams in the bracket, like Kansas State, and no disrespect to like Oklahoma and all that stuff, but like we were all very excited to see the potential USC, UConn, Juju Watkins versus Paige Becker's battle in the Elite Eight. And as sports fans, we are robbed of that, but obviously, most importantly, unfortunately, Juju Watkins is robbed of that and making a tournament run this March. So she is now out for the remainder of the season. PJ, you alluded to it earlier with the betting odds, because that's where, like, for what we do, because obviously us being a betting show, that's where it gets to be really interesting, because USC was about 5-1 or so at BetMGM prior to the injury and like heading into last night's game. A lot of expectations for USC to at least get to the Elite Eight, maybe even further in the NCAA tournament. But now they're out to 25-1, and the team that was their direct competition in the region, the UConn Huskies, they have now emerged as the favorite at plus 175. If you have a bet in this market, PJ, I'd be curious to see it. But when you see the market move like that, it does feel like this was a not just, that doesn't feel like it is a massive injury and something that really impacts not just USC, but the entire NCAA tournament. It's that monumental of an injury. But now this is really going to dictate who ultimately wins the title with the UConn Huskies, a 2 seed now favored to cut down the nets and do the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm looking at BetMGM right now, Femi, and we don't have any lines up right now for the USC game, right? Because
those markets are still down for right now.
They're still down. But again, like how many times on this show do we talk about the fallen hero spot, right? And again, think about what USC had to endure yesterday after Juju goes down and still battle like they did, blow out Mississippi State. Again, we got to see what the line is, but I think I'm going to come right back with them in the Sweet 16. Beating UConn, even with Juju, was going to be tough, so beating them without her, I don't think they'll be able to do that, but I'm certainly thinking we're going to get a nice number on them in their Sweet 16 matchup, and I would take USC in that game. But yeah, for me, it's UConn. You know, I mean, that's the team, but you can't bet them at this price at plus 175. The time to get them, obviously, was when Juju was healthy, and it was going to be USC UConn in the Elite Eight. They already hammered South Carolina earlier this year in Columbia. So I still like UConn. Now, you might argue, again, because they don't have USC, I mean, they're 14.5-point favorites against Oklahoma, UConn is, in the Sweet 16. They go up against USC. Without Juju, they're probably going to be about a double-digit favorite in that game, too. So, I mean, UConn, they're going to be double-digit favorites leading into the Final Four. So you could argue that maybe there is still some potential value there at plus 175. But I don't really think there is a bet to be made in this market, Femi. It looks like we're certainly on a collision course for UConn, South Carolina, one of those teams to win it. But I think the bet for me is when the line does drop for USC's Sweet 16 game, I think I'm going to be on the Trojans.
You know, it is interesting the fact that South Carolina is not the favorite. Now, you could argue they're maybe a co-favorite since it's plus 175 in comparison to plus 200. So it's like it's UConn and South Carolina neck and neck. But, I mean, South Carolina is also a massive favorite in their Sweet 16 game against Maryland. Like, they're laying 17.5. So, like, if the betting market is correct, they have the easiest path to getting to the Elite Eight. You would think that team would actually be the favorite, but they also, like you mentioned, they've gotten blown out in games against USC. Like, they don't look that great. Against UConn. They don't look that great this season in comparison to where they've been in years past. So they still have Don Staley, who has a lot of pedigree, has won a lot of tournament games, is a great tournament coach, and has won multiple national titles. But I don't know if it's the same dominant South Carolina team. The one that I really am interested in, though, is on the same side of the bracket with UConn and USC, and that's UCLA. Because outside of Juju Watkins, the best player in college basketball this season has probably been Lauren Betts, who's like the 6'7" post player for the Bruins. Like, she has been amazing. And I think she dropped 30 and 14 in their second round game. Like, she's been unreal in their performances so far in the tournament. The second round game, they beat Richmond. Like, they play Ole Miss coming up in the Sweet 16, and they'll get either LSU or NC State if they get by Ole Miss. I know they're not a big favorite in that Ole Miss game, only 7.5, but they get to the tournament. I mean, into the Final Four at least. That's a big player who's a tough matchup, and they just keep feeding her the ball at a long price, at least longish comparison to some of these other teams that we're talking about. Plus 650 might not be the worst bet to be made on the UCLA Bruins, but a lot of ramifications from this Juju Watkins injury here, PJ. And yeah, I think as fans, ultimately we lose, but as bettors, there could be an opportunity for us to take advantage of this once we get into the Sweet 16 round coming up later on this weekend.
100%. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what that spread is for the Kansas State game, but I think I'm going to be on USC. It's a good point about UCLA, too. You know, outside of South Carolina, UConn, if there was a team to look at, it might be the Bruins.
women's college basketball analyst for ESPN, Christy Thomas-Scuddy, joins us here on You Better You Bet. Coach, we appreciate you hanging out with us this afternoon. And we'll start off, obviously, with this Juju Watkins injury. We were all watching the game last night, settling in, really excited for it. And then late in the first quarter, Juju Watkins goes down. It wasn't good, and the news came out, it was even worse. How do the Trojans bounce back? And I guess, what is the impact of losing not just a star player, this is probably the best player in the country in Juju Watkins?
Well, I think when you talk about the impact, it's multidimensional. Obviously, how does it affect USC? How does it affect the game of women's basketball? And let's face it, she's a cultural icon. So how does it affect just bigger picture when it comes to her brand and everything else? To be there courtside, I have been in arenas where injuries have occurred. But this was one of those where you literally felt the life leave because it was so emotional in that moment. And kudos, first and foremost, to SC and the way they handled it. I left there last night thinking we're not going to really know the extent of this until their next game, and they'll release something. And they have been forthcoming in everything, whether it was the mid-game release to the late announcement last night as soon as they knew that, unfortunately, yes, it was a season-ending knee injury. So first and foremost, heart goes out to Juju and her family, and obviously the SC family. Here's the thing. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, they can't win a national championship now. I will say, if Kiki Uriophen plays the way she played last night, I would not rule this team out. If you listen to me in both broadcasts, I am really high on the freshman class at SC. They picked it up in her absence yesterday. And so I am not saying this team is done. Now, they have obviously a very difficult matchup with K-State coming up. So from that perspective, it starts with Aoka Lee. How do the bigs play? But SC has size. It then comes down to those freshman guards stepping up like they did last night.
Yeah, Coach, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that Lindsey Gottlieb, head coach for USC, that she's going to face in their next round? Obviously, you're losing one of the best players in the country, the focal point of your offense. Like, how do you think she works around that to get her team ready for their Sweet 16 matchup?
Well, I mean, we know it's a big transition because Juju accounted for almost 40% of their offense when you talk about her points and her assists a game. That's a big loss as you go into the Sweet 16. But one thing I was really impressed with that entire last 35 minutes of the game is how Lindsey put her players in position and almost didn't let them think on the court. And I don't take that away because she has a very free-flowing offense, but she dissected Mississippi State's defense. And Mississippi State, coming out of the SEC, was known for their defense, how they, with their athleticism, how they would disrupt you. And Lindsey was the aggressor with her play calling yesterday. And so I think as long as her players can continue to dial in and think we over me, and that's what I saw last night. Like, they knew who had the hot hand. That was Kiki. And then when Kiki got doubled or there was a crowd, she knew to kick. And so I think if that can keep happening, they'll be fine. And I'll say this, and I said it because they struggled in the first quarter against UNC Greensboro. As much as we talk about SC's offense, and they were the 10th highest scoring offense going into last night's game, it starts with their defense. And that's why I think they have a chance every night because of Rhea Marshall.